Skip it up and that up.
Oh, Rich, are you really talking about this? Bro, it's like a month old, man. Like, seriously, like you couldn't find, what is it, a slow news day?
No, it's actually not a slow news day. I just think this is a really important topic to talk about in the gaming community. And I could talk about this like 5 years from now and it would still be relevant. So yeah, deal with it. So relatively recently, VentureBeat posted gameplay of Dean Takahashi. He's a games journalist. He's been doing his thing for about 20 years, playing Cuphead. He played the Gamescom demo, and it was almost about 30 minutes of footage. And it's god awful. Okay, I'll have a link to it below in the description. It's bad to the point that you have to question if he really games. Now, they had a nice long explanation. Like I said, I'll have a link below to the gameplay video in the description saying, oh, Dean just doesn't play platformers. He's unfamiliar with them. They're just not his thing. He's not good at them. But my question is he couldn't even handle the tutorial. Even if you're not good at a certain genre of games, what the tutorial in Cuphead asks you, you're seeing the gameplay here too, isn't rocket science. It's having basic motor skills. And Dean, because of this, took a lot of heat. If you go, the video's at like over 800,000 views. It has 3,000 likes, I should say, and 19,000 dislikes. And like I said, Dean got a lot of flack because of this, because people were like, how could you be a seasoned veteran games journalist and you can't handle a basic tutorial in a platformer? And I have to agree. I made a video last year about Polygon posting gameplay of Doom right before it was released, and supposedly it wasn't their former journalist Arthur Geese, and then people were saying that it was, and then Tara Long actually got at me on Twitter and said it wasn't him. But that's besides the point. The gameplay that they showed was god awful. It looked like someone never picked up a Xbox One or PS4 gamepad before and didn't know how to use two analog sticks at the same time. If you don't believe me, I'll have a link below to that gameplay. And it brought up the question, do game journalists have to be good at games to review them? Do they have to have a certain level of skill to be a competent games journalist? And honestly, I think yes, they do. Now, in the description below, I'll also have a VentureBeat article where Dean Takahashi explains why he played so crappily, and he actually apologizes for it. So if you want to check it out, look at the description. There'll be a link to the VentureBeat article. Now, I remember last year I made a video too talking about a Paste magazine article where they came out and were defending Polygon against the bad gameplay, saying, hey, it's not about how the person played the game. It's about if they're having fun or not, which, fine, if they were a regular person who wasn't a games journalist, or even, supposedly it wasn't Arthur Geese that was playing Doom. If it was just footage of someone who purchased the game, who uploaded it, and they were having fun, and yeah, they were terrible, okay, fine, let them have fun and be bad at Doom. But it was Polygon, a major journalism website where people there review games, and their reviews have a substantial influence on how games sell. If they're playing the game and they're not competent at it, how can they review it properly? How do they know if the controls are good or not? How do they know how challenging the game is if they can't perform basic tasks in a first-person shooter? Again, I implore you to look at the gameplay footage from Polygon. I would love to post it here, but Polygon is not a big fan of me ever since that whole fallout with Arthur Geese and Tara Long last year, so just go check out the link. You can see it there. And that's where I think people get mad at Dean Takahashi and Polygon, so on and so forth. It's not that they want them to be the like MLG status gamers where they have to be absolutely amazing at every game they play, but they want the games journalists to be competent enough and familiar enough with games to know, okay, the controls aren't that great. They aren't that precise. They feel loose, or, if you're playing a platformer like Cuphead. Now, Dean Takahashi was not the person that reviewed Cuphead for VentureBeat, but you want them to be like, all right, this is a platformer. How are the controls? How is the jumping? How is the gameplay? Is it repetitive? Is it challenging enough? Are the bosses fair, challenging fights? Or are they over the top and they're just hard for the sake of being frustrating and hard? And you need someone who's good enough. Okay, I don't want them to be pros. I don't want that. But they need to be good enough and competent enough at games that they could judge them honestly. And they need to have enough experience with games that they could say, hey, Cuphead's great at this, but it's at this. Or Doom is good at this, but it's at this. Or whatever. Elder Scrolls 5 Skyrim. I'm just pulling names out of my head of games. I like this about it, but didn't like this. And they have to just be competent. That's all I ask. Like, look, I'm not great at games. I get crap in my comment section all the time. Oh, Rich, you're terrible. You're being so cheap using that gun, so on and so forth. You're terrible at CSGO. But I'm competent enough at games as a whole, but at first-person shooters, that if a new first-person shooter came out and I work for ABC Journalism Gaming Company and they wanted me to review it, I know I'm familiar enough with first-person shooters and I'm able to play the game well enough that I could give a good review of it and be honest about it and know that I like this first-person shooter for this, but I think the controls are loose here, or I think it starts to get repetitive towards the end, or I think, especially this is why you need to be competent in a game. Say there's a part that is just too hard and you feel that the challenge is imbalanced. If you're a competent gamer, you could say, okay, I know this part of the game, the challenge is, it's just frustratingly hard and it shouldn't be. Whereas if you suck at a game or you suck at first person shooters, you can't say, I think it's too hard here, but you just may be terrible at it. And that's why games journalists have to just be competent. They just need to be good enough so they can give an honest, accurate review. Because if they're bad, like Polygon Doom gameplay bad, how could you trust their review? They obviously don't know what they're doing if they play that terribly. And that's why I think people get on Dean and we got on Arthur Geis. Again, people say I suck at games, and I'll be the first to admit, yeah, I do sometimes suck at games quite a bit. But I'm technically not a games journalist, and I consider myself good enough that if you put a review copy of a game in front of me, I can hold a controller and wrap my mind around the game to give a solid review and tell you what's good and bad about it. And that's what I think game reviewers need to do. They just need to be good enough so they could tell us if a game is good or bad. Because games journalists have to understand, whether we like it or not, their reviews can make or break a game. And if they just suck at a game and that's the reason they're giving it a bad review, that could seriously hurt the sales of that game and hurt the company that developed and published that game. So yeah, it is a big deal. It's not that, the gaming community is like, oh, I'm a better gamer than these games journalists. I personally don't care about that anyway. I care about the fact that I want accurate, honest reviews. And if someone isn't a good enough gamer to give accurate, honest reviews, that's a big problem. So I'll end this video by saying this. To the games journalists out there, I don't condone when you get straight up attacked with threats or super nasty things on Twitter or on social media. But at the same time, I understand why the gaming community gets frustrated when they see games journalists playing games god awful, because if you're just bad at a game and that game journalist gives the game a bad review, even though the game very well could be excellent, he or she just sucks at it, we end up missing out on a great game, and the developers and publishers behind it may miss out on millions of dollars simply because a journalist gave a game a bad review because they just weren't good at it. So everyone all around gets hurt by it, and the games journalist community also gets hurt by it because their credibility gets hurt. No one wins. This is Rich of Review Tech USA signing out. Have a good one.